Okay, to start out this meeting, we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance. We are just gonna bring this guy right here.
We've got 5 people on Zoom.
We have some people on Zoom.
Okay,
Okay,
some
before we
orders.
starting, if you could, Zoom join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Someday.
Welcome to another meeting of the Tri-Valley Democratic Club. I'm just going to start out tonight's meeting with a brief reading, the 14th Amendment, Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of the state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each houses, remove such disabilities. So there's that little caveat.
How do you like that? Jackie,
Yes.
I would like to propose that this club entertain a resolution telling the California Secretary of State to bar Donald J. Trump from running for president on the ballot in California because he engaged in insurrection.
I would love
I'll
that.
present that to the club next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on.
Our first speaker tonight, Supervisor Nate Miley, was first elected to the Alameda County Board of Supervisors representing District 4 in November of 2000, and is currently serving, I believe, your sixth term in office. Prior to that, represented the city of Oakland. And the district includes the city of Oakland, or parts of Oakland, the city of Pleasanton, as well as Ashland, Castro Valley, Cherryland, Elport, Portal Ridge, Fairmont Terrace, Fairview, and Hillcrest Knolls. In January 2023, he was appointed president by his colleagues on the Board of Supervisors. This is the second time that Supervisor Miley has served in that capacity. Throughout his time in elected office, he fought to protect open space, strengthen our healthcare system, and create more livable and safe neighborhoods. And one thing I read when I was doing research on you is that you were part of the Meds Coalition. And for those that don't know what that is, when you go down to CVS or some of these pharmacies and you will see the safe handling of medication, a way to dispose of it to ensure it doesn't get in the wrong hands, or seniors that maybe you get confused and take the wrong medication. Or in the case of my husband, who is battling stage 4 cancer, and his pills, I wouldn't want them anywhere in our landfill. Let's just say that. You don't want some of these chemicals into our landfill. So thank you for providing that. And so to speak to our club and ask for endorsement again, I want to welcome Supervisor Nate Miley. You have up to a full half hour.
Oh, very
You
good.
can speak to the club and then open it up for questions, and I'll let you come at your own pace.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So just to kind of follow up on what was just stated, yes, the pharmaceutical ordinance, that was groundbreaking. Yeah, so we passed that ordinance as the county supervisors in 2012. led that whole effort for about 5 years. We took on the entire pharmaceutical industry, not just here in county, just in California, but nationally. Because our ordinance ultimately, when we passed, because you couldn't get something like that passed in the state legislature. Ultimately, when we passed it, it was challenged from all the way from the U.S. Supreme Court. It was upheld in the United States Supreme Court in law of the land, and that allowed for all the other ordinances to take place that deal with requiring pharmaceutical companies, manufacturers to come up with plans to properly dispose of their medications. So, environment, public safety, health, etc. So that was groundbreaking, right? And I led that effort. One of my major achievements. Yes. So as county supervisor, I've been on the board for a few years, but I'm running again, mainly because for two reasons. One, 3 of my colleagues are no longer supervisors. First of all, I appreciate coming to the Tri-Valley and speak this evening. I've been here a few years with the pandemic and things, so it's good to be here. Supervisor Scott Haggerty retired in 2020, and then unfortunately 2 of my colleagues died. One Chan was killed crossing the street with a dog in Alameda, and Supervisor Valle died of cancer. And all that happened in the last 2 years. And, whenever I think about it, it chokes me up. Because, I know Wilma going back to the time when she first ran as a school to get on the school board and supported her assembly and supervisor throughout her career. And the same thing with Supervisor Valle, city council in our Union City, then becoming the county supervisor. So it always is kind of hard to think about that the 2 of them gone. And then we add Haggerty to the mix. We're probably talking about close to 100 years public sector service that the board of supervisors has lost in the last few years. So I thought it was important for continuity, have an experienced, seasoned person stay on the board of supervisors, provide that continuity, provide that understanding, have relationships that go far and wide and deep. Because, I serve on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, serve on the Association of Area Governments, I serve on the Area Housing Finance Authority, I serve on LAFCO, I serve on the Transportation Commission, and I serve on the Joint Powers Authority that deals with the sports team and Marine. So I'm involved with a lot of stuff on a regional basis. And I also have responsibility in my district, as was pointed out, goes from Oakland to Pleasant. And unique part of my district is the fact that, it cuts across 3 parts of the county: North County, Central County, and East. And, the politics are sometimes different, let's put it that way. So I have to be very mindful and schizophrenic in my ability to represent the needs of my constituents all over my district. The unincorporated area, if the unincorporated area were a city, it would be the 4th largest city in Alameda County. Oakland, Fremont, and Haywood would be larger. So the unincorporated area is about 140, 150,000 people, and that's 9,000 of them. So we are municipal government there for the unincorporated area. So that takes up a lot of my responsibility as well. So we're constantly on the go. My office is not just reactive, we're proactive. I'm really pleased to acknowledge Valerie Arkin here. Valerie, even though she's on the Pleasant City Council, she's on my staff too, helping with issues, not just the Pleasant, but regional, etc. So we're really pleased to have that. Now, in addition to me running because of my colleagues and the experience I think I bring to the board, I'm running also because there are a number of issues and things I want to continue to work on that I think are very important. Mental health, that's a very important issue. Trying to fully fund our community mental health plan, working on that a number of years. I really feel that the mental health crisis is an emergency. Try to get the board of supervisors a number of times to go to our reserves, escrow accounts, and pull money out of that to fully fund the emergency mental health plan. Wasn't successful, but what I have been able to do, particularly as of the last budget, is get the board to set a designation account we're now putting money into that account to fully fund the forensic mental health plan. And it's gotta, it's gotta be funded, because if we can provide mental health services in the community, it's much more compassionate about folks receiving those services in the community, as opposed to not receiving those services or having to go to Santa Rita jail and places like that. That just isn't very effective in serving the public interest. And then I also support care courts, which the county has to implement by the end of 2024. I'm a big proponent of mandatory compulsory treatment, because there are people who refuse treatment, or they voluntarily get treatment and then they leave, or they're stabilized. And with care courts, that will mandate treatment. Now, I can't mandate somebody going to treatment, but a first responder, clinician, someone of that nature could notice that somebody is in deep need of a mandatory compulsory treatment. They can take that to the judge once we implement this. Judge can make a determination this person needs a 1 year or 2 year treatment plan, and they could establish that, and that would hopefully bring about some treatment. So we need to come up with facilities, and we need to come up with a solid program, get some folks who are mentally ill into treatment. I think that helps to alleviate some of the problems that we have with homelessness. That's another big issue, homelessness. The county put together a home together plan, $2.5 billion. We're in the second year of implementing that plan. And with that $2.5 billion, looking here, we want to try to get something like over 4,000 additional supportive housing units, over 3,000 new supportive housing units for older adults and frail elders, over 10,000 new dedicated affordable units, subsidized units as well, 5,200 shelter subsidies, and 1,600 additional rapidly housing units, for a total of 24,340 units of housing. That's significant, because we feel that we're able to achieve that $2.5 billion, it's going to really drastically reduce the homeless crisis in Alameda County. We approved this plan 2 years ago. We have an Office of Homeless Care and Coordination. It's $91 million. It's got roughly 90 staff. This office, when it started a number of years ago, was just 1 or 2 staff. But we've merged departments, we've consolidated departments, divisions, put them under this office so we can focus on homelessness with a laser focus. It's looking at collecting data. There's been a number of achievements along the way. And I can talk about the achievements if you would like, but the big point is what we found through the first year. The first year we've had some remarkable achievements, but even with those achievements, there are more people coming unhoused than we are able to house and provide shelter for. So we need to stop that, spigot, and this plan will get at that. Another piece that's important is an affordable housing fund. On the Housing Finance Authority, we're looking to put a $10 billion bond on the ballot for the 9 Bay Area County region. $1 billion would be raised for Alameda County. That money would go for production of housing, preservation of housing, and protection. Those 3 things: production, preservation, and protection. And we would put together a flexible spending plan, because what we're looking at is a constitutional amendment that would allow for that bond measure to go on the November 2024 ballot, allow for that bond measure to pass by 55% or 50% plus 1. It's a constitutional amendment that the state legislators have put ballot, and we're confident they're going to do that. Polling shows if it's 55% or 50% plus 1, it will pass. So it's 2/3 throughout the 9 county Bay Area region. So that money will help us out a lot in terms of getting at some of the homeless crisis as well, building more units, affordable housing for the extremely low income, very low income, plus moderate income as well, because we need to build housing in all those ranges. And in the unincorporated area alone, with our arena numbers, we need to come up with close to 5,000 new housing units just in the unincorporated area. So mental health, homelessness, affordable housing. Also involved in the county's efforts around reparations for descendants, African American descendants of slavery. Been pushing on that for a while. We talk more about that as well. Out here in the Tri-Valley, talk with the city manager and some of the city staff, some and Zone 7 staff about the issue of PFAS in the water, but PFAS isn't just in the water. So working with the attorneys nationally that sued DuPont and won that case, PFAS can be found in a lot of, not just in the water, a lot of products throughout the county. So I had a meeting with them, county council, we're hoping to put them on contingency so we can come up with a plan first to raise awareness on PFAS, because whenever I talk about PFAS, people don't know what I'm talking about. Raise awareness. Secondly, test people for PFAS contamination. And third, to put together an ordinance that will require those industries that use PFAS to clean, to come up with solutions to and alternatives so that PFAS isn't an environment danger to us. So that's a big thing. Then out here in the valley, working about trying to make sure that we bring a light rail from San Joaquin into Alameda County so that it takes off the congestion off the Altamont, improves air quality, provides jobs. We've raised about 800 million, 1.2 billion. I think that's needed for Valley Link. So that's another big project that we're working on to pursue. When it comes to reparations, a piece of that is the African American Sports and Entertainment, which is the group that's working to develop the Coliseum. A lot of folks feel that the Oakland A's lead. That's unfortunate, but I see it as the glass half full as opposed to half empty. We're looking to bring a WNBA team to the Coliseum area. We're looking to go into agreements with the Oakland Roots, Soul, which is the male and female soccer team. And soccer's big, and then but for I don't want to speak LBAs, but for the A's not being flexible with their schedule, we would have had cricket here, the World Series of Cricket. And so if the A's leave, we can pursue cricket. And cricket is, I mean, it's huge internationally. I don't know a thing about cricket, but it's big. So there, so that's what I'm saying. The glass isn't half empty, it's half full in terms of the opportunities we can bring to the Coliseum. So that's another thing that I'm really steadfastly working on. I have an illegal dumping task force that's a statewide task force working to address illegal dumping because it knows no boundaries. You can find illegal dumping in rural areas, suburban areas, city areas as well. And you can pass laws to deal with it one place and they'll just pop up somewhere else. So I've been working with a statewide task force that I organized that's trying to address illegal dumping throughout the entire state, not just in one jurisdiction. And we're making headway there as well. I think the only other thing I would want to mention is something that really gets under my skin. It's the pervasiveness of lawlessness throughout our society. I'm a big public safety person. Now I want police to do their jobs constitutionally, professionally. I believe in 21st century police, the Obama administration, where police are guardians. That's what even warriors or guardians. Their police are the community police. But we need to have consequences for illegal behavior, for criminality. Otherwise, the rule of law in our society will just decay. And I earnestly believe that's what's happening with retail theft, with strong arm robberies, with home invasions, their homicides, all sorts of criminality is taking place in everywhere, at any time of the day, any time of the night. I have to look over my shoulders. My significant other, I'm constantly telling her to look over her shoulders, head on the swivel. So I really feel it's important that we have accountability and consequences for poor behavior, bad behavior, and criminality. Now, I'm not saying lock everybody up. I'm not saying that, but there's got to be consequences. I take my job very seriously. Oakland City Council, 10 years, county supervisor, 20+ years. And if government can't provide public safety, can't ensure our safe neighborhoods, then government is failing us. It really is. It really is. And I don't want my children and their adult children my grandchildren, I say for my constituents, any of us to have to be totally in fear, to have to arm ourselves 24/7 when we walk out of our doors to feel safe. That just, I mean, that's just the formula for destruction. So I think we really need to get a better handle on safe neighborhoods and lawlessness and inappropriate behavior. And I think that's a societal norm. It's not just a norm for Tri-Valley or Pleasanton or Oakland. It's a societal norm that we all have to come together on. So those are some of the reasons I'm still running, not just because I lost 2 colleagues and one retired. So campaign wise, I really would value the support of the Tri-Valley Democratic Club. You supported me in the past. You know, I've got Congressman Swalwell's endorsement, got the endorsement of the mayor of the entire city council of Pleasanton. I've got the endorsement of 5 or 6 of the Oakland City Council members. I can't remember how many at the moment. Got the endorsement of Supervisor Carson and Halbert. Got the endorsement of the treasurer, county treasurer, Fawn Law, county auditor, Melissa Wilk, sheriff, county sheriff, Yesenia Sanchez, county treasurer, Hank Levy, endorsement of the California Alameda Building and Trades, local firefighters, local 55, laborers 304, and I mean, many others that I'm at the moment on that. Oh yeah, the support of the California treasurer, Fawn Law, as well as superintendent of schools for the state, Tony Thurman. So yeah, and we've got a few endorsements there. People are still trying to get more. So those are some things just to kind of impart to you. I still feel very, very healthy, vigorous, ready to go at it. I'm not sitting back and just twiddling my thumbs and getting late and sloppy. I'm out there making things happen. My staff helps me all the time. Moni is just the people I work with. I've got great staff, and we're here to serve. And we're here to make life better, not just in the Tri-Valley, but throughout my district and throughout the county. So that I'll answer questions.
Okay, open it up questions, and looks like the first question is eligible.
I don't seem to get person here. A few meetings ago, we had a half a dozen members of various city councils from the Tri-Valley here. And one of the issues is what I'll call unfunded mandates, particularly when it has to do with low-cost housing, that the state has mandated municipalities like Pleasanton or Dublin to create a certain amount of affordable housing, and then there's no funding to back that up. And this seems to be people with bone of contention. And you as a supervisor sort of stand in the middle between the state legislature and local municipalities. What's your feel about that issue?
Yeah, well, I hate unfunded mandates. The state's always doing that. Criminal justice reform, other types of things the state's done. They put these obligations, even care courts, they put these obligations on counties. They often do it without sufficient funding. So despite that, I think we need to build housing. We need to have production. It's not the panacea, but we need to have more supply. There's just no if and buts about that. We need to have more supply. And I think that's why throughout the region, we're going to come up with that $1 billion, $10 billion for the region, so we can build more housing, produce more housing, preserve housing that's affordable, and protect people who are low income, tenants, others who are in housing, so they don't get displaced. So I do support the need for more housing. I think it's unfortunate the state provides these mandates without funding, but sometimes we just have to do it on our own. And one thing we've learned in Alameda County, the state will do things and the county's able to adjust. I've seen this over the years as a supervisor. Budget's about $1 billion. I've seen this over the years, we adjust. And it's not like you get rewarded for adjusting. It's like we do what's right because we have to do what's right. We have to come up with the funds, but it's not like the state says, "Oh, you did a great job. We're going to give you some, extra money or some bonuses or whatever, bonus points or something. No, no. What can I say? You gotta do what's in the best interest of the public. And I think coming up with funds through the region will be our best bet at the moment.
Thank you.
I have a question. And thank you for mentioning the PFAS, because we have been talking about that here at our club the past couple of months. Because we do have members of Pleasanton City Council as club members, so they enlightened us with PFAS. Can you tell us more about what is being looked at countywide or statewide to address this? And if it's in our water and in other places, how do we get rid of this awful plastic?
Yes, I can't tell you what's happening statewide, but I can tell you what we're gonna try to do in Alameda County. Once again, I'm working with the attorneys who nationally sued DuPont and got DuPont to take corrective measures. So we have a meeting with them, county council on Monday, it's coming Monday, where we'll be talking about hopefully bringing them on a contingent basis so they can work with us on strategies to come about or go about trying to address the PFAS contamination. And as I said, the three variables I see: one, public awareness, because like I said, most people don't have a clue about PFAS. When I talk about it, and I tell people Google it. And initially I thought it was just a Tri-Valley issue with the water, but I had to get educated around that. So I want to raise public awareness about it. Secondly, then I want to get people tested. Jill Buck is working with me on this as well as Kathy Mirren. We'll get folks tested. Then, and I want to have the industry pay for this too. Then the third thing is pass a local ordinance. I want to see the county council, we're not preempted or something, and these other attorneys can work with my office on crafting an ordinance locally in Alameda County, where we might even ban PFAS. I don't know. I don't know where that's going to take us, but I've started that journey. So stay tuned.
And the other thing about plastics is, back when they stopped handing out grocery bags, and it was always my belief that they were going to start banning plastic one-use bags altogether, but it seems like now the grocery stores are just selling them instead, and we still have all the plastic. What else besides the PFAS, but just getting rid of plastics in general, or reducing the amount of plastic waste?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because that's why I have the legal dumping task force, because litter and trash and all that stuff drives me nuts. And I could spend all day just picking up trash and garbage and that and the other. We're polluting our waterways, we're polluting space. I mean, and I think we need these products, but it's important that the manufacturers of these products take responsibility for dealing with these products at the end of their life cycle, when people no longer want them. And that's called producer extended responsibility. And we need to have producer extended responsibility to deal with all these products in our society. And we've banned styrofoam in Alameda County. I'd like to see us explore banning plastic.
You'd still find it though. Unfortunately, you go to Walmart and they're still selling it. Isn't that awful?
Something from Amazon without styrofoam.
Yeah, it drives me nuts to see it. Yeah. So quite frankly, that's what I'm saying. Like with illegal dumping, we can do something locally, but if it isn't something statewide or national with some teeth and some enforcement, it's kind of like we're not making as much progress as we could make.
I appreciate your advanced consciousness in terms of environmental controls on waste and garbage. And applaud your efforts with your organizations to curtail a lot of the major producers of waste in this area. We do have one major producer that I do believe needs more control. And I'm wondering what your position is with Schnitzer Steel, which is down by the harbor and is a major pollutant that is so strong that they've been able to resist many efforts to control governments at many levels. Do you or any of the organizations that you have anything in the works to put some controls onto these major polluters?
Well, I think the biggest regulatory body that I'm a part of that could deal with Schnitzer Steel, we can't put them out of business, and that's always kind of the concern that the public has. Why can't you just put them out of business? It's the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We regulate air quality. We pass laws. We probably regulate over 40,000 types of industries. I mean, we even regulate all of you in terms of if you have wood fireplaces, you can't burn, wood on certain days in the fireplace. So I know the air district has looked at Snitzer Steel. Probably as a result of that fire, there might be some penalties that will be levied against Snitzer Steel. Once again, when folks wanted a crematorium shut down, folks wanted something done with AB&I. We can only go in and regulate as the air district. In terms of trying to deal with those types of uses in a community, ultimately the local jurisdiction through its land use authority would have to say, we're no longer going to allow this type of land use in our jurisdiction. And maybe it would become, grandfathered in, but eventually that use would be no longer there. Or to come up with a regulatory scheme, because I've had some industries actually move to other locations so they were not maybe near communities and other things. And then the final thing Snitzer Steel is maybe the Port of Oakland might be able to do a little bit more to pressure Snitzer Steel, maybe, I don't know. But, when the A's were looking to put their stadium next to Snitzer Steel, that was very controversial, very controversial.
Well, thank you for your clarification.
Do we have another question? Yeah.
Your face is very red.
So,
Go.
I have two questions. First question is, can you tell us a little bit about what you do to ensure that we have local recycling?
Oh, well, there is the Alameda County Recycling Authority. I'm not on that. I think for the Board of Supervisors, Dave Halbert's on it. I can't remember who I appointed. That body tries to deal with recycling throughout the county. It's a countywide body. So if the county were to pass regulations, they would only be applicable to the unincorporated area. If you want to do something in a particular city, a city would have to do that. And even like with the styrofoam ban, we were able to do that through the Waste Management Authority in terms of dealing with styrofoam. So if I were to try to do something more recycling and things of that nature, I'd probably go through the Waste Management Authority. The other thing is, I think people get confused about recycling. Recycling containers, products get contaminated, things of that nature. I think we need to try to, maybe some young minds could come up with a way that we could make recycling maybe easier, more convenient, and understandable for the general public. Because I often see people who, they just don't recycle, and they don't. And in some cases, they might care about recycling, but either they're confused or they just take a shortcut and don't recycle. So I do think it's important. And then the other thing is, I think we need to continue to try to put responsibility on manufacturers of some of these products to try to eliminate excess packaging and things of that nature, so that we have less items that we have to recycle. I think that's another piece of the equation.
Sure. Go ahead.
So my second question is, you mentioned your support for the 21st century policing. All that is long. I was wondering if you can tell us what if any role.
Yeah, well, the Board of Supervisors, we do approve the budget for the Sheriff's Department. I mean, there are the people who have suggested we should cut the budget for the Sheriff's Department. I'm not in favor of that, because all law enforcement agencies throughout the regions, there's a shortage of law enforcement. And the shortage is because law enforcement has been disparaged. A lot of folks aren't supportive of law enforcement. We've rooted out law enforcement personnel who should have never been in enforcement, like, what's happening in Pittsburgh and Antioch. So we clearly know there are people that should be in law enforcement. So the pool of applicants and candidates has shrunk. So I think it's important that we support law enforcement, that we have tools for them to do the job, and then we expect them to do the job professionally in the Constitution. Then if they aren't doing the job, we deal with those officers, as opposed to not, saying we don't need a policeman, this, that, and the other. So I continue to support the efforts of the sheriff's department. Just recently, the sheriff and I took an ordinance to the Board of Supervisors that was approved to deal with sideshow. Because sideshow, I've been watching sideshow grow over the last 10 plus years or more, because it just started off as a small little thing at night in certain locations. It's grown now where it's a public safety issue. It takes over residential communities, Bay Bridge, other places throughout the region and area. And there's gunfire, there's havoc and things associated with sideshow. The ordinance that we passed basically is a deterrent, so people don't want to participate in a sideshow or be spectators at a sideshow. It gives law enforcement discretion to look at that and determine whether or not you are a participant or a spectator. So that's another piece. So people can disagree with me. I really feel that if we can make our society and our community safe, then we've lost it. We've lost it. And so that's but I do believe in upstream approaches, prevention. I do believe in intervention. The city council in Oakland, I led the effort to put together the violence prevention plan in Oakland. As county supervisor, I led the effort for the county to adopt the violence prevention plan in 2006. Comprehensive plan deals with all forms of violence. And so we have that plan in place. I support funding going to the public health department for violence prevention. So I do believe in upstream approaches. I do believe in intervention, but also believe in
And I think we have time for just one more question. Richard.
Hi, Supervisor. Thanks for being here. My question is, as you obviously know, you have a challenger this year for your seat. I was wondering what you feel separates you from Jennifer Steen, who's now running for your seat.
But I might have two challenges. Jennifer, as you mentioned, Jennifer, maybe as the goals we ran against me last time. I think the big thing that separates us is I have experience, I have know-how, I have relationships both in this county and beyond. I know my district like the back of my hand. I have experienced staff who's worked in these issues. What I found, to my chagrin, is these issues haven't gotten easier; they've gotten tougher. And I don't just say because of COVID; they've just gotten tougher. We didn't have a homeless crisis, 4 or 5 years ago, as we do today. So, and then the whole pervasiveness of lawlessness. I mean, we didn't have that. Maybe it was the other extreme where we had, police misconduct. So how do you balance these things out? So these issues haven't gotten easier, they've gotten tougher. And the way I approach things is what's in the best interest of the public at large? What's in the best interest? What's in the public good? I'm not in office to try to advocate for one side or the other. I'm in office to look at what's going to be in the greater good for all of us. And that's kind of how I see things. And I think my experience is you can't replace that experience. And quickly with my background, I came to California in 1970s after I finished law school. I was working $50 a month out of law school, working in the communities of Oakland, knocking on doors, trying to get people to address their issues before City Hall. I did that for a number of years. And it's that community organizing mentality and the way I see things as a community organizer, working with grassroots, that continues to help drive me. That's why we are very proactive as opposed to reactive. So I just don't think you can replace that with novices, let's put it that way. And I think my two opponents are novices. But I welcome my opponents because I always say you can't have a race without an opponent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you so much. I want to remind folks, we're not voting on the endorsement tonight. We did hear from Jennifer a couple months back. And that video is out there. We will share the videos from tonight, and next month we will be doing our actual endorsement vote. So at our regular meeting next month on the races that we've heard so far, we will put it in front of members to vote and endorse on the races that we've heard from. And by the way, we've not been able to get through to Katie Porter's campaign to get her to speak. We'll continue to work on that. So we did hear from two senators, our two candidates for Senate, our three candidates for Senate is Jacob's not here tonight.
Jacob.
He's not here tonight, is he? No.
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Anyways, we will be voting on our endorsements next month. And here to introduce our next speaker, I'm going to welcome Richard up. Vice President, you're gonna introduce our next speaker.
Well, first of all, thank you Supervisors for being here and for giving us your time. Our next speaker is a longtime member of the club, the always wonderful Jean Josey. Jean has been a resident of the city of Dublin for 23 years. She's been on city council since 2018 and is an educator for the Dublin Unified School District as her day job. Jean's someone that I'm proud to know personally. I've only lived in Dublin for a couple of years, but she's certainly been a champion for things like affordable housing and education and public safety as long as I've been here. And now she is running for mayor. She understands this community. She wants to continue the good work that she's been doing on council. So I'll shut up now. Here's Jean Josey.
Thank you for that nice intro. It's really nice to be back in front of this club, my home club, and meeting right here in Dublin is always nice. Thank you to the supervisor for his time tonight. It was great listening to you. I'm going to take not too much time because I think most of you know me. Since this is my home club, and leave more time for questions. Doesn't seem like I was that long. It's been that long since I was up here answering questions that you all had. When we did from all three cities, we had council members up here from all three cities answering questions. So if you have additional questions, that'd be great. But I do want to talk a little bit about my background, about the work that I've done so far on council and what my priorities are for my remaining time on council. Richard did a great job of my introduction. I have been here since 2000. Before that, I am from Washington, D.C. I graduated from University of Washington, so both Washingtons on either coast, with a degree in technical writing. And when we moved to California in 2000, I had small kids, and so I spent most of my time volunteering. My husband and I decided that it was worth our time for me to stay home with the kids. But when they were in school, I do feel like that if you're not in the work world, you owe the world your volunteer time if you're not working to give back in some way. So I threw myself into volunteer work when we moved to Dublin, and mostly with the school district, and got very, very involved with school committees and things. And so I was going to school board meetings all the time. And there was crossover between school board meetings and city council meetings. And so I started going to city council meetings because of an issue that school district and the city council were trying to work out. And then I got hooked on city council meetings. So I was there all the time. And in 2017, I was appointed to the city's fiscal sustainability task force to advise the city council on ways to increase revenue and cut expenses with a deficit that they saw on the projected horizon about 6 years out from 2070. And then I got recruited to run for council, and here I am. So we have been able to continue to push out that deficit through the work that we've done on council. And so that is one of my priorities, is sustainability on our Dublin council, both fiscal sustainability and environmental sustainability. We are really in an enviable position in Dublin that with our latest community survey, 87% of residents in Dublin feel that this is an excellent or very good place to live and raise your family. That doesn't mean that we don't have work to do, but we are in a really good position, and that has been slowly increasing since we've been doing these community surveys. One of the things that people worry a little about though is, sustainability long-term, and we've done a good job of getting the word out that we might have this looming deficit. But it's still more than 6 years out now. If you believe the 2017 numbers, we should have had that deficit already, and we don't, because of the policies that we've been able to implement from that task force and the things that we've been able to do on council. And so that is one of the things that I really want to work towards and continue to work towards, is making sure that we are both fiscally sustainable, but also environmentally sustainable. So that ties in with economic development too. We have some really big priorities. So one of the main reasons I'm running for mayor is because right now, our current council, we're all sort of rowing in the same direction. We don't always vote the same way, but we have a strategic plan that we all agree on. We want to make sure that we bring our downtown vision to reality. We want to make sure that we are able to create our Fallon East economic development zone. We want to make sure that we provide affordable housing and a sustainable way. We have slowed down growth overall. You know, Dublin, as everybody knows, was the fastest growing city in the state from the 2010 to the 2020 census, 12th fastest growing city in the country.
Wow.
We have been adding housing at a very rapid clip. That has slowed a little bit through the pandemic and things like that as we put our plan in place. All of that growth was planned. It was all voted on. It was a voter approved initiative to build out East Dublin. But that brings challenges as well as opportunities, right? We know that the opportunities that it brought were the funding for our schools, the funding for our parks, the funding for our great community buildings. The challenges that it brings are the crowding that happened in our schools, the crowding on our roads, and the congestion. But as we approach build out, and we are approaching build out, the development funding slows down. And so over time, how are we going to sustain all these beautiful parks that we built that are all within, you know, the same sort of age? And, you know, as new homes and parks and community facilities age, they need work. So how are we going to maintain all those things long term? So what we want to do is increase our economic development areas. So we have increased sales tax, property taxes, and economic engines that will help to compensate for some of those development dollars that are not coming before our city. So I want to make sure that we continue to advance the priorities that we have. And I think everybody in this room, it's maybe not everybody online, and certainly not everybody in the larger community, understands that in the 2024 election, that will be the first by-district election in the city of Dublin. And so we have seen how by-district elections on the Dublin School Board, and certainly in some other cities, cause divisiveness sometimes, as people look out only for the district from which they were elected and less so from the whole city. So one of the things that is really important to me is that we make sure that we have a mayor that is, you know, we always have a by-large mayor that is looking out for the whole city. But I want to make sure that we have a mayor that is a uniter, that can bring the whole city together, that can make sure that as new council members are coming in and that are elected by district for the first time, that can make sure that we are united as one in our purpose of looking out for the entire city of Dublin, and not looking out just for specific districts, and not fighting for, well, my district wants this, but my district wants this. In a town the size of Dublin, we should be all working together anyway. We don't have disparate neighborhoods so much. We don't have like just a business commercial district and just residential districts. We did a really cohesive job of making sure that our districts have kind of the same type of things in them, as we look to make sure that we didn't have just a commercial district and just residential district. But the nature of elections, right, are people that are going to want to talk just to their voters if they think they're only elected by district. So I want to make sure that we have a mayor that is saying, look, we're in this for everybody. Right now, I think we have a great council. We're all looking out for the same priorities, but I want to make sure that we have a mayor that can speak to the city to say, we are all in this for one thing. So we want to make sure that we are getting our downtown Dublin vision move forward for the dining district and the pedestrian friendly downtown that our residents have been asking for years and years and years. And the way to make that happen is to make sure that we get our town square park, we get the ground broken for that, and that we get our businesses built up around that park, and that we get good commercial businesses around that park as well. And we will have residential around that as well, because we want those businesses to survive, those restaurants to survive, not only when we're not in there, but when we're not, because we need a critical mass in order to have a pedestrian friendly downtown. And for those businesses to survive. So we're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on the Fallon East Economic Development Zone, which is where Dublin Boulevard Extension is gonna go through. And so that we have green tech and biotech and light industrial, good paying jobs right here in Dublin. And the Boulevard Extension will go from where Fallon is now to Livermore. So you'll be able to drive right through. And only south of the Boulevard, the extension, which will be very close to 580, will have any development on it at all. North of Dublin Boulevard will still be canyons and open space. And so that's very important to continue to grow our tax base and to have good jobs here that folks coming in on Valley Link will be able to work at and will help to increase our economic base. I touched a little bit on sustainability earlier. Making sure that we are economically sustainable is key. Making sure we are environmentally sustainable has always been one of my absolute rock bottom platforms. In fact, we talked about a styrofoam ban when the supervisor was speaking. The very first thing that I asked for on council, that I asked my colleagues to join with me, was to have Dublin opt into the styrofoam ban from Waste Management Authority. We were not currently opted in when I first got on council, and was like, why are we still allowing styrofoam takeout containers in Dublin? And so, you know, being part of the solution and not part of the problem in Dublin has been key. I've been instrumental in the electrification of the building codes here and making sure that we are really doing all we can for climate action, making sure that we are doing, putting in as many chargers as we can. And of course, you see all the solar projects that are in Dublin, and making sure that we are continuing to move forward on climate initiatives. It's not just local governments that don't always move unless we're told to, but individual residents don't always do the right thing unless we're told to. So we talked about recycling a little bit earlier, and you know, making sure that we have the free stream recycling in all of the businesses and that they are complying is something that we're working hard on. And with our waste hauler, I know, Joseph, you asked the question earlier about recycling. We're making sure that that we're educating our residents on how to recycle, that we're working very closely with our waste hauler to provide large green bins for yard waste and the small kitchen bins for recycling, but also the education to tell people what goes where, to go out to our businesses that haven't, you know, we have a ton of small, fast casual mom and pop restaurants here, making sure that they understand what their requirements are as far as making sure they have free stream recycling in all their businesses, and educating them on how to place their containers so that it's easy for residents to comply and so that they can recycle, doing those kinds of things. And then the other thing is safety. That's my other priority. If people don't feel safe, then they can't opt into all of these other things that we really want to do, and we don't support the other initiatives. And safety is not just police officers. It's making sure that we have our resources going in the right places. So we have, as a council, stood up a behavioral health unit within the police department here in Dublin. We put quite a lot of our pandemic dollars to get that up and running, and now we will be budgeting for it going forward to make sure that we have a supervisor and 2 clinicians that go out as part of our police services, so that once we've made one contact with a family or an individual, we don't keep sending officers to that house over and over and over again. We send our behavioral health team to make sure that they're getting the services that they need to prevent future 911 calls, so that we are getting them into a diversion program, we're getting them into therapy, we're getting them into the treatments that they need, so that we don't keep having police contact with them over and over and over again. We're also working really hard to try to bring the CAT teams from the other half of the county over to Dublin, so that they're working here, making sure that we're not sending uniformed officers to our high schools for 5150 calls, because that just stresses the kids out even worse. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. She mentioned that my day job is at Dublin High, which this year has about 3,700 students on campus. We have 3 high schools all sharing one campus this year, and it's huge. And making sure that when kids are in crisis, it's not a uniform that's coming in and stressing that out even further. We do have school resource officers that are fantastic here in Dublin that do work on campus. The kids actually really enjoy seeing them. They were on campus on Friday. I got to spend some time out in the quad at lunchtime with them, and the kids were coming up to them over and over and over again. Can we have a sticker? Can we talk to you? Can we, you know? And, our officers are rating them. Making sure that we have the right officers here in Dublin is key for us. We are, contracted with Alameda County Sheriff's Office for our police services. And the benefits of that, making sure that we continue with that relationship. We, never have a vacancy for more than 10 days. Even as Alameda County struggles to fill, their backlog, because that's part of our contract. That if somebody goes on maternity leave, somebody's injured, somebody quits, we get backfilled within 10 days. And we get to pick who those officers are and make sure that we get the premium. We also have the advantage of having, additional resources. Knock on wood, if there was ever a huge incident here, not only do we get the officers that are assigned to Dublin Police Services on the daily, but we also have the, sheriff's office headquarters are here. We would get, extra response here, which if we ran our own police department, we wouldn't have. It's also much more budget friendly because we are not having to, we certainly pay in the contract for their retirement, but we are not fully responsible for their retirement, and retirement costs go up. But that's only one piece of public safety. Of course, the second piece is fire safety. With climate change, we know that fires are getting worse and worse. We had that huge scary incident last year, or year and a half now, at Shaper Ranch, where the grass fire swept up from 580 and came very close to the backyards of those houses. So a priority for me is making sure that our fire departments are fully staffed and that we have the right response times, and that we're making sure that we have the right number of EMS and firefighters on the job, that the bulldozer is available to us. Make sure that we, you know, as we expand, we have the right coverage to make sure that we are able to cover all areas. And then the reliability of, you know, we've seen more and more public safety shutoffs, power shutoffs, and we have to put in place things for resiliency. We put in place at all of our major intersections, hydrogen powered backups, generators, so that if there's a public safety power shutoff, we have more than like 4 or 5 hours of generations on those big key intersections. We can run them for a couple of days so that traffic moves safely through the city, even if power is shut off. So those are the things that are really important to me to make sure that we move things forward. So those priorities, you've heard many of them before. Thank you for your endorsement in the 2020 election, and in the 2022 election, and in the 2018 election. So why me for mayor? As we move forward, it is really important to me that we have a mayor that is appointing the right people to commissions and committees, because the mayor is just one more vote, 1 of 5 on the council. It's always going to be 1 of 5 on the council. The big difference between a council member and a mayor is committee and commission appointments. The mayor makes those appointments. Council can thumbs up or thumbs down, but they can't recommend or appoint somebody to a committee and commission. As we move to by-district elections, I want to make sure that we are building the bench, that we are appointing the right people to our committees and commissions from across the city, and people that have the values that I think that our citizens want to see in their committee and commission members. And the other main reason is, you know, the 2 other things that the mayor does that is different from council, obviously represents the city in ribbon cuttings and speeches and the state of the city report. I feel pretty strongly that the people that we have in Dublin, and anybody on council right now, is good at that sort of thing. But delivering a cohesive message that this is what our values are, this is what we stand for. I feel like I'm the right person to do that. And then the third thing is being able to run an effective meeting. We have a couple of things coming up on our agenda in the next few years that could be contentious. We have some housing projects coming up. We certainly have affordable housing projects coming up. We have we need to get Dublin Boulevard extension over the finish line. And sometimes we have people in the public who don't want to follow the rules of decorum. We have things that, you know, sometimes we don't agree on things. And I want to make sure that we are having effective meetings, that we have somebody that can stay on the room, that can run an effective meeting. And I think I'm that person. And so I'm going to stop talking now. And I'm going to ask you guys if you have any questions for me. Alice?
I always have the first.
You have to go first.
Always.
Well, that's
Seems like your bio started in 2000 when you came to Dublin, but you lived in Washington, D.C. What is it in your background, possibly growing up, that differentiated you from all of the rest of us who don't run public office? What made you decide that you wanted to be a leader rather than most people don't? Is there some event in your life or a person that affected you? And also, what makes you think that you're a leader? What are your personality characteristics, your attributes?
Well, I keep getting drafted and pushed to the leadership position. I had no desire to be on council. In fact, 3 weeks before I filed the first time, I was still saying I will never run for office. And this whole thing's happened all at once. I was always involved. I was the president of the PFSO at every school my kids were ever at. I was on the board of every organization I was ever in. But I was not particularly interested in running for office. Sure, I'll serve on your committee. Yes, I'll serve on your committee. Sure, I'll serve on your committee. Like I did a lot of that sort of thing, but I was not interested in public office until and most of you know Don Biddle. When he was ill, and before it was announced publicly that he was ill, several people quietly came to me because I was already on the task force. I was already going to every city council and meeting and had been for a couple of years, and said, you said you don't want to run. He had been trying to recruit me to run, and so but that was he tried to recruit everybody to run. Several of the people had been trying to recruit me to run, and several folks said, you said you would never run for office, but if Don cannot finish his term, would you be willing to be appointed to his term to finish out his term? And that was a no-brainer for me. Of course I would do that. I mean, I loved Don and I respected him tremendously. And the week that he died, my godmother had passed away about a month before, and the memorial service for her was that same week, back in Washington, D.C. She was, at the time that she died rather suddenly. She was the president of the DC chapter of the League of Women Voters when she died, and she was very instrumental in working on DC statehood at the time. She'd written a big paper that actually was published 3 months after she passed, but at the time. And I don't know if you remember what was happening in 2017 and 2018 in Dublin, but there was a lot of contention happening. There was a lot of angry people speaking in council meetings. There were a lot of people complaining, a lot of people highlighting issues but not proposing solutions. And a friend and I were talking about starting a chapter of the League of Women Voters here in Washington, here in Dublin. But we weren't quite sure how to go about it. The reason we were trying to do that is because we wanted to host forums for the upcoming election. We would host Livermore, maybe Livermore would host Pleasanton, Pleasanton would host us. So we wanted to host start a Tri-Valley, restart a Tri-Valley chapter of League of Women Voters. So my friend said to me, you're going back for the memorial service, talk to her friends and find out how we get this chapter started. So I had in the back of my mind, maybe I'll put in to finish out Dawn's term. We want to start a League of Women Voters chapter. So when I went back to her memorial service, and to tell you a little bit about it, this is a long-winded answer. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
She had taken me to my first protest when I was very small, because my mother was fantastic, but not of the same political bent. And she and I talked politics, some. And so when I was talking to her friends, I was asking them, how do we go about this? And they were saying why, and I was explaining the climate in Dublin at the time. And one of them finally leaned over and patted me on the knee and said, "Honey, you run." And that sort of stuck with me. And so when I came back, we had the council meeting about, they talked about the rules where they wanted to appoint somebody to Don's seat, but they didn't want somebody appointed who was thinking about running. And I was not thinking about running right until they said, "You can't. You know my personality much." And they said, "You can't, you can put in for this point." But then I was like, "Well, what if I want to?" And I didn't really. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I was looking around and there was about 12 people that put their names in for that appointment. And they were really good people. They were really experienced people. They were planning commission members. They were former council members. They were people that were in the know or paying attention to what the issues were. So they weren't people that would ramp up to speed. But I wasn't seeing anybody who was going to run for the 4-year term. And so that's why.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
It's a good answer.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for the upcoming election?
You mentioned open space.
Yes.
Born and raised in Livermore. I love the hills around our home. Obviously,
Mhm.
Measure D is a great thing to have that protection of our
Yes.
open space. What is Dublin's future plan on how to preserve that? So how do you balance the housing piece with also the open space piece? And where do you envision that being?
Yeah, so my plan going forward is preserve as much as possible open space. We have RENA numbers. We need to build housing because everybody has to build housing. Sometimes we get, requests for, general plan amendments to put other things, not even housing, on open space. My personal feeling is we have a lot of infill space still. We have small pockets of infill space. I'm fine, my opinion is there's a big difference between open space and a vacant lot. Dublin still has vacant lots. Let's put stuff on our vacant lots, but let's preserve our our open space. In fact, I have voted no on multiple things now that have come forward that are asking us to rezone open space. The first housing project that came before me was, to rezone some open space for a small housing project. And I led the charge to vote that down. There was a controversial, project for an affordable housing, senior assisted living project, that was on, was zoned for open space. They wanted us to rezone that. I voted no on that as well because it was open space on that note, and, I lost that vote. But protecting open space is, exceedingly important to me. It's unfortunate she stepped out, you didn't answer, but the rest of you get. So my priority will be protecting the open space that we have now. I know it's a big priority for, other council members as well. I know it's a huge priority for our residents. I mentioned at the very beginning of my talk that, we had our community survey. That was one of the big things that people mentioned is protecting open space is a worry for them. So we do have a vote that will come up, not too long from now about Measure D, and reaffirming it or not. There is a small piece of Alameda County.
Or not?
Well,
That made me bite my nails.
I'm not concerned. It was pretty overwhelming. Before, there is a small piece of land in Alameda County that would need to be annexed into Dublin. That is below where Dublin Boulevard extension would be. It's a tiny little piece. Between Dublin and Livermore, so something needs to be done with that, one way or the other. It's the only part of Alameda County that's not Livermore or Dublin, it's a part of Alameda County. Yeah, that's where my priorities lie on open space.
Thank you.
Joseph?
So you were talking about. I just wanted to get your perspective on what do you do to maintain balance? Making sure we have a good balance between density.
Yeah, so we don't have much place left to sprawl in Dublin. So we will be going, with our RENA numbers, you can look at where we put our sites. Most of them are infill sites for our RENA numbers. We were given 3,700 houses for our RENA numbers. We have, already passed our housing element, and so you can go and see exactly where those are. Some of them will be down by the BART stations. We do have 2 BART stations. My opinion is if you have BART stations, you should have transit-oriented development. You know, I'm a big supporter of multimodal transportation and putting houses where public transportation is. Am I not answering your question?
Well, you're kind of, it's kind of on it, like slightly to the side, but I guess I was more concerned about how do we maintain a proper density?
Yeah, so we have 2 projects that are yet to be built, 2 large projects that are yet to be built. We have the East Ranch project, which is mostly single family homes, a few townhomes. And then we have the SCS project, which is now called the DC, which is the 80 acres that's across from the Tassajara Safeway. If I could have designed them both, they would both look closer to the DC, which is the 80 acres across from Tassajara Safeway, because of the mix of housing types that are in there. You have some single family homes, you have some apartments, you have some small townhouses, and I'm very excited about that, because I hate the term affordable by design, but that's really what they are. They're actual for sale townhouses that are 1 and 2 bedrooms with a single garage, that are actually, we used to use the term starter home, but they're actually for sale units that are not deed restricted, that people will actually be able to afford to buy if interest rates ever come down. They're, you get in on the ground floor and you start building equity. And then, when your family gets bigger and expands, you can start to buy. I'm very concerned about the fact that the only for sale homes are 3,000 square foot, single family homes. We don't have, small. I want us to build smaller so that people can actually afford to buy places, so that you don't have just the 2 bookends, right? Tiny little apartments that may or may not be deed restricted, and huge single family homes and nothing in the middle. Like, I have been pushing and pushing and pushing developers to build things in the middle. And so this DC project has a little bit of everything. And to me, that's the perfect mix, because there's no one size fits all for somebody looking for a home, whether it's to buy or to rent or whatever. You have to build everything in the middle. And we have been doing a good job of that, of pushing developers to bring us something different, not just big single family homes or deed restricted apartments.
Okay.
Other
Any
questions?
other questions? I have time for one more, or any closing comments? And I will share, by the way, I do have all of your guys's websites. I will share that in the chat here when we finish up.
Well, that's my closing remark. I appreciate your endorsement in the past. I've built a wide coalition of people endorsing in Dublin and regionally, and I hope to have your endorsement this time around too. Please check out my website, and there certainly is a donation link on there. So campaigns are expensive. If you should choose to donate, that would be great too. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. And now up next, Ellis Goldberg is going to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you.
Oh, that's not on, Ellis. We had all the feedback with that. Just speak loud.
Take me out.
That's right.
I'm up here to introduce somebody who is very determined and resilient. She's just out and out tough. I've known Marisol Rubio for probably 10 years. And came to Novus, and she's been on our bench. And when I mean our bench, club's bench and Contra Costa County's bench, and to some extent Alameda County's bench, as a candidate running for office in various things. Her story goes like this. She married at a very early age, had a child, who's sitting right there, Alex. Divorced. Marisol herself is the daughter of the single mother. And she had a brand new baby, and a year and a half, 2 years in, found that the baby had brain cancer. That was something that would stop a lot of people in their tracks. Didn't stop Marisol. Has a great deal of determination, resilience. And in those years, since Alex was 2 years old, Marisol got a bachelor's degree in neuroscience. And because of her interest in her daughter's issues, she also became an expert at teaching people who had those kind of issues. And at this point, Alex is just graduated from junior college.
Yes.
Junior college.
Yeah.
And Spoke to Marisol last week and I said, how's Alex doing? She said she's driving up from San Diego, where she's going to be going to school at UC San Diego. Talk about and climb vertical uphill in her life. Marisol. Marisol is currently member of the Contra Costa Central Committee, very active in that role. She's a member of this club for a long time. She's the president of the Diablo Valley Democratic Club. She's on the Contra Costa Labor Council. So she has a lot of stuff on her plate. My wife says, but she seems to be able to handle it. Most recently, she was elected to the San Ramon City Council and seems to be doing a good job there. So, an unusual person, as I said, she's been on our bench for a long time. And it's her turn to take a seat in the state legislature. Then she'll be running probably against another Democrat, Tim Grayson, who's an assembly member up in Concord, around Todos Santos Plaza, and that area of the world. And she has a real good competitor. But I think she will prevail. Without further ado, Marisol Rubio.
Thank you.
You have a half hour
Yeah.
to answer questions, make a statement. Welcome to the Tri-Valley Dens again.
Thank you for having me. Can they hear me without, or do you want me to hold the microphone?
The microphone doesn't really work.
Oh,
so
doesn't
yeah,
really work, so we'll just, okay.
project.
Project my voice. Okay, so, thank you, Alice, for that, honestly heartfelt introduction. Trying not to get emotional, but sometimes it's hard because, a lot of times, for me, you asked the question earlier about why we're running, and my why is a very personal one that I, have really struggled with alongside my daughter to make sure she came out on the other side and I came out on the other side for the past 28 years. And it came at a lot of sacrifice and a lot of tears. It was not easy. School systems were not equipped to support my daughter in the capacity that she needed, which is why I did, as mentioned earlier, I went into studying molecular cell biology with an emphasis in neurobiology at Berkeley. And also, wanted to be the best advocate I could be for her in her healthcare, because I had experienced early on when she was going through the initial diagnosis, there was multiple occasions, even down to the very treatment of her cancer, where they thought she was terminally ill. And I fought back against that at the time, against doctors, was top doctors at a top 10 pediatric university. And as a single mom, they just didn't have a whole lot of respect for me and what I had to say in that space in that time, And so I pushed back against that and asked them to give me their top 3 choices. And I said, I'm going to go do some research. Back then. We didn't have cell phones, so I had to go to the computer lab for 6.5 hours and figure out which treatment my daughter I was going to ask them to pursue with her. And by the following morning, I gave it to them, and it was it was a treatment that was still under clinical. It was a adjuvant treatment, so there were 2 chemotherapies combined. One of them was still in clinical trials and had only been tested on adults, and but showed very good promise in getting through what they call a blood-brain barrier, which has always been a difficult challenge of treating central nervous system cancers. And so we went with that. We got approval after 3 days from the NIH to give her treatment. She was the first pediatric patient to receive that treatment, so it was very much an experiment. But I was fighting for her life in that moment. It was a life and death choice. And fortunately, 13 months later, on May 2nd, 1998, she was in remission. And the rest is history, literally. But that was, it's, thank you. But it really was also the beginning of a very difficult and challenging journey for both of us. Alex had to go through a lot of things with the school, not getting support, like I said, academically that she needed. Students who would, unfortunately, were bullying her on a regular basis. And, you know, it wasn't uncommon every other day to get a call around 9 a.m. that something had already happened. And so you can just imagine the disruption that causes in our family and the pain just really that my daughter had to overcome, the both of us. I mean, it hurt, but especially her as a young person having to go through that. So there was a lot of things that I learned firsthand and started to see what's working in our school systems, what's not working. I started to see what's working in our healthcare system, what's not working as what works and what doesn't work there. And so eventually, as her health became more stable over time, and she got older and was able to be more independent in terms, at least academically, where I didn't have to provide such intensive academic support like I used to, which was literally about 6 days a week, 3 hours a day at minimum during her K through 12 education. You know, that gave me the space to reflect upon what do I want to do with all of this, you know, and honestly, it was a group of activists here, and Alice knows who they are, who came up to me and said, you know, I really, just like Josey said, you know, I really think you need to run, you need to tell your story, and you need to like give visibility to these issues. And so that's why I'm here. To give that, be that voice and to give that visibility. But interestingly, I was doing a lot of research since 2004 about what are the impacts of being a primary caregiver, what are the psychosocial and health consequences of doing that. And the statistics are daunting. And it's not just the children that we have to concern ourselves with, you know, the recipient of the care, but the providers themselves. Those who are dealing with high stress situations, which can include anything from having social buffers of family, employment, consistent employment, which is very difficult for primary caregivers, sufficient, adequate living wages, all of those stressors, every aspect of it is being pressed upon someone who is typically caring, especially in someone with low resources. And what they discovered is that oftentimes these caregivers were dying as early as 10 years before the person they were caring for. The stress rates, the anxiety rates, the suicide rates were off the charts. Their cellular aging was 6 times the rate. Cellular aging is how fast your cells will turn over. And each time they turn over, your telomeres get shorter, which means those cells will die, you know, and eventually they die off. And that's what happens with aging at 6 times the rate of a single parent. So that's the kind of stress we're talking about. Nobody does anything. It's like we get very little. We can't even get $20 right now. We had to fight for $20, and that's going to happen over 4 years. In 4 years, $20 is still going to put us $9 below the living wage. It's really, really depressing. So, and I consider it a human rights issue, because when we are actively allowing people to die before us in circumstances when they are actually providing a $58 billion savings to the state of California, $470 billion savings nationally, it's a shame on us, on our government, that they won't even pay them a living wage, much less give them complete benefits. So, but that is happening across various sectors as well. And the other thing that I've done over the years now, so as you know, initially I came in very, very focused on the disability rights, but then eventually in doing a lot of my volunteer work, I became involved in women's organizations like Femme Truth Youth, which is a women's organization that helps with advocacy and education for women's reproductive health. I was a founding advisory board member there. And I also was a founding advisory board member for a fund, the Natalie Project, which provides protections for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. which is, and that is, this is one of the reasons primary caregivers that are home care is so important because individuals with IDD in particular, it's 7 to 8 times the rate to be abused in these care centers. It's a big problem. And so, you know, we need to, with the silver wave happening and all of these, and the staffing going down, we're really hitting a crisis point. And this is something that back since 2004, when I was doing research, I was writing about this since then, about the lack of sustainability in our system in this regard. But this is one of the, like I said, the reason I came into this space. But then looking into disabilities led to talking about women's reproductive health. I think especially on the heels of Roe v. Wade being turned over, we have a real problem about where our society is heading, and we are facing threats to our very basic rights. A woman's right to choose is an inherent personal right that should never be taken away. And right now we have you know, the person I'm running against is literally considered the most hostile Democrat by NARAL to reproductive freedom. That's the kind of person I'm running against. And in terms of the environment, I'm also on 2 executive boards for Sierra Club. I'm on the Sierra Club California and the Sierra Club San Francisco Bay chapter since 2019. And I've been serving in that capacity, trying to address issues of DEI within the organization, as well as fight for environmental issues across the board. And I was also in the Tri-Valley group as well. And again, this is an issue where my opponent and I diverged and have repeatedly not voted, including not voting for a bill that would protect, you know, keep oil drilling, new oil wells 3,200 feet away from homes, schools, and parks. So when we talk about cancer rates, we talk about chronic illness, we talk about comorbidities and why this is happening in low resource and typically low resource and communities of color. There's a reason behind that. And we don't have people fighting for us aggressively and making sure that those protections are in place. And there's also the issues that we face right now with book banning. That's a really real concern. I don't know if people realize how staggering the suicide rates are for transgender youth. They are 7.6% more likely to commit suicide. And according to the Academy of Pediatrics, more than 50% transgender male teens will commit suicide. 29.9% of transgender female teens will commit suicide. 41.8% of any among non-binary youth. That is staggering. And here we are fighting about whether we should allow them to have access to books that will provide them information they need and support they need to know where to go and find that support and what to do. Well, not every family is built the same way. Not every child can go to their parents and talk about these issues. And when we take that right away, we take away their only outlet, their only access to information and reliable information. So, and another thing that I have stood with since the first race I ran is that I have been a corporate-free, realtor-free, developer-free, police-free, corporate-free candidate since day one. I have never taken money from special interests. And there's a very good reason behind that, because I never want my decisions to be conflicted with anything else except focusing on you, the people first. I came here to fight for you, to fight for families like mine. And I can't do that in good faith when I'm having my donor pressing my back for the return favor. So I'm not beholden to any of those entities. The only money I have and only will continue to take is from individuals and labor. And that is my commitment to you. And you know, even in the in my role as the Director and Vice President of the Dublin San Ramon Services Water District, we won an award that was only given to 39 special districts out of 2,050 across California for transparency and accountability in the time that I was there. Now in the San Ramon City Council after 2.5 years of a local climate group trying to get a climate committee or commission to be considered on our city council. I finally got passed through an ad hoc council committee to discuss the option of considering a climate action committee or commission. That is my commitment. I have promised my constituents then that I was going to fight for environmental rights, protect our open spaces, and as we face mandates coming down from the state, we have to make sure that our cities are prepared to meet those mandates and have the staffing and the supportive staff that are in through our committees or commissions to support those initiatives and make sure that we can achieve those goals together. So with that said, I'm going to relinquish the rest of my time for any questions you may have.
Open it up for questions. Anyone? Ellis?
I got to say my piece earlier. And good job.
Thank you.
And Marisol, remind me about your website. I apologize. It's on my phone and it's being used as a camera right now. So
That is Marisol for CA, so FO, it's MARISOL. F as in Frank, ORCA.com.
there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And by the way, we did reach out to the gentleman, what's his name? Yep.
Grace.
Yes, I did reach out to his office and tried to get a hold of him, and I have yet to hear. So
Marisol, thank you so much, and we appreciate your commitment to mental health and to your daughter's survival and health. And you really are a persistent lady. That's a very good talent to have in government service. So assuming that you win and into your first 4-year term on the state Senate, what would you say were the 3 main issues that you are going to work hard on? And secondarily, are there any bills or movements that you would support in dealing with those issues?
Sure. I would absolutely look to make sure that California becomes a sanctuary state, to make sure that women are able to come here regardless of where they live in the United States to get access to safe, affordable abortions if needed. And I also would like to make an initiative to, as I'm also already a co-chair of the Labor Climate Task Force for Contra Costa County, which was a pilot program, and I'm the co-chair there on the environmental side, coalescing, organizing all the environmental groups, because frankly, I care about our workers, but I don't really have much interest in the fossil fuel industry itself. So I just want to make sure our workers have jobs, and we have to make a sincere push to move to cleaner, renewable energy. And I want to make sure our workers and frankly, that the fossil fuel industries themselves are proactive partners in making sure to help them transition out without complications. And third issue, I'm thinking priority, I would probably say is, honestly, this is a little bit, I honestly think that we have to, right now, I would I think the housing issues is going to be a big one. I think that the housing affordability is a problem. A lot of these homes that, for example, you can buy a home, but you have to stay as long as 50, 55 years before you can sell it and even get anything out of it. And you're not going to actually reap all the benefits of, say, if you had bought a regular home and the equity that's built on it. That to me is problematic. What that means is basically you're paying into something and still walking away with very little. So you're not building equity. And so you're just creating transgenerational poverty. That to me doesn't make sense. I think there needs to be laws that make sure that, you know, there aren't these deeds, termed out deeds and with housing. We also need to make sure that we fill in, you know, there's vacant apartments sitting out there, you know, that people either can't afford or make too much money for. So we need to be able to allow people to move into those places and provide a means to make it more flexible for landlords and management companies to make those apartments accessible to people who need them, instead of just leaving them vacant there. I think also, you know, the reality is that UCSF study on affordable housing revealed what I said in 2020, which is the minimum wage has to be the living wage. One full-time job should enable you to afford an apartment. And we can't in California. That's a problem. And that UCSF study only confirmed that. It's wages, and it's typically a $300 margin. I had my rent once increase such that it was $600 a month it went up.
Yikes.
Off my car note, and I was happy, and I was like, oh wow, now I can actually save a little. And boom, they spiked my rent in a 15-month period by $600 a month. I was almost fearing I was going to end up homeless. And those are the kind of things that we really need to put an end to and make sure we put caps on rent increases and reduce it from 10 to 5%. 10% is a lot. And especially if you think about a $2,500 apartment, you're talking about $250 a month. And what that adds to, you know, almost $3,000 a year. So it's problematic. And there's a lot of things that I think in housing we have to do. Funding is a big part of it, making sure that we are providing, keeping it a solvent system where we can help people, individual cities achieve their goals. But, you know, initially, I think it's also making sure that the cities that have been historically resistant are being held accountable, which I'm grateful that our Attorney General is doing that.
Good, well, that's a very nice summary of three elements: women's rights, economic housing that's available, so controls from major polluters. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So first off, I'd just like to say, sounds like you are an absolutely fantastic person. So I'm just gonna say that right there. But, and this kind of dovetails with asking. So let's say you get elected. What is the first, whatever, is getting to the finish line?
Honestly, I think for me, the things like I mentioned, those are three really big priorities that I would look into right away. But another one that I think is going to be essential, because as someone who, you know, is a corporate-free candidate, I'm not very well liked by certain sectors and powers that be. And I think we need to repeal Citizens United and make sure that we are like pushing the federal government to like repeal that and holding our electeds accountable. Even though it's the state legislature, I think we need to push for that and make sure that we are holding our electeds accountable and asking for a higher standard. Because oftentimes when we talk about all of these initiatives, when we talk about the environment, when we talk about housing, we talk about, just really a whole host of range of issues. There's competing interests. And when someone's taking insurance companies, let's talk about hospitals, for example, hospital closures, because their hospitals are getting privatized, right? And so corporations are now running our healthcare. So these smaller hospitals are being closed out. In all debates we had in Berkeley, hospitals close out, and now the transportation time just to get to care is putting people at risk. They're dying. And this is happening disproportionately again in low resource communities. So I think that really trying to consider a bill that would in California that would push for making sure we are embracing a more transparent and accountable election process is important.
Is there a bill on the table about that?
I haven't heard of one on the table yet, but I do think, for example, like talking about healthcare, I mean, I think healthcare would be a great initiative. We know a lot of people say, universal healthcare is out of reach. But the reality is that universal healthcare is, they'll say, we don't know how much it's gonna cost, but if you really look at, other industrialized countries, that we know for a fact that it costs a lot less than what we've been paying for. And when it comes to quality of care domains, we are actually underperforming consistently compared to other comparably industrialized countries. So I think supporting bills like healthcare, making sure that we, doing nothing when it comes to healthcare is not an answer. That's not an answer. When we're spending so much more than anyone else on these initiatives, this is money that could go to our schools, money that could go to programs, housing, that could go to all these other initiatives, and it's not going there because we supposedly don't have money, but yet we're not being efficient. And we really do need to rethink about where we can be more efficient in that respect. And I think that, there are some bills, like I think 1672 is one that's Matt Haney is pushing forward. That's the one for home care providers that I really like. That's going to finally bring the negotiation process over to home health, the state instead of the county, because honestly, it's the state that's benefiting from the work we're doing. Like I said, they're saving $58 billion a year for the state. The state should be paying us, right? And taking that burden off of the counties themselves. And also making it, there's disproportionate pay scales that are happening as a result. And certain, like Kern County has a very low pay scale for home care providers. I think other bills that, like I said earlier, making sure to protect us. I would absolutely support making California a sanctuary state, making sure that we protect the right to an abortion in California, regardless of what the Supreme Court does. I think, and also, honestly, we need to make sure that we stop offshore drilling. Donald Trump in January 2018 opened up 90% of our water, federal waters, and allowed, drilling to be reconsidered again in our waters. And that's like the last thing we need when it comes to the fact that we're experiencing 3 to 4 years of drought at a time. A lot of people don't understand how climate change works. They see the rain and they think, oh, well, see, it rained, we're all good. That's not true. I mean, it's the confluence of those extreme weather events that are the epitome, that very definition of climate change. And we are seeing that happening at a very rapid rate. So those are some of the things that I would honestly pursue. And I, would be my top priorities.
Can we, Valerie, lady in the pink.
I'm sorry, can I interject really?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll have Valerie, and then we have to wrap up, sorry, because we're really over time already, but Valerie, go for it.
Thank you, Marisol, and thank you for being corporate free, developer free. Because I did the same thing running for council, and I appreciate that. That's influence. So thank you for that. Pleasant City Council, and sure you have experienced this too. And as it relates to housing, the state is taking away a lot. Two cities are alike. Yes, we have an affordability issue. We have to deal with that. Absolutely. With what the state has done, we've kind of seen that just in general, building more housing doesn't make it cheaper. Otherwise, these cities are not cheaper. Prices have gone up. So I think there needs to be better solutions. Number one, so what your take on that is, and also about the taking away the local control. Steve Glazer has been advocating for local control since change. So I kind of want to
So like I said, first and foremost, there are a lot of different aspects of what causes people to become unhoused. That, like I said, were wages is a big part of that. Uh, as well as the fact that, you know, are we being efficient? Are there vacant, spaces, units that are not being used and just sitting there, or lots that are sitting there and not being used because, you know, they're preserving them, hoping that they'll get more money later for it. I mean, these are the kind of things that we have to put a stop to, frankly, but also I think there's a component, you know, that we really have to, with a finer comb, look at the cities that have not shown good faith and in building out and making sure they're doing their part. And also making sure that, like, I think what has happened in some cities is where there's an imbalance between jobs and housing. And that makes it very difficult in many ways to meet the demands of things that are being asked of us now. So I do think that we need to provide more funding resources for cities that may not fall into that category. That would be the first to get first dibs into, you know, funds for affordable housing, find ways to provide more grants and funds for those cities who kind of fall in that margin to be able to have access to those funds. You know, I think that, you know, we have to find a way to allow local cities to be able to have input and feedback and exchange of communication in some way so that they can obviously dictate better what would be the best way to meet those goals for their cities. I think right now, you know, anytime there's like a big sweeping bill where there's no means for feedback, a two-way feedback is always a little problematic. So you want to make sure there's a means to have open communication both ways. If there's a genuine concern that there's not funding being attainable, have a way for those cities to be able to have someone to talk to and ascertain that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. It's Marisol. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we are running a little bit behind, I apologize, but the rest is going to be club business. So hopefully it will go very fast. I sent out an email that contained 2 links for 2 different ballots. One for pre-endorsement reps. We have been granted 2 members in AD 16 that can be put forward to participate in the pre-endorsement conference. Last month or the month before, we put up, we had members throw names in the hat as far as who they wanted to nominate, who were members as of April 25th. So you had to be in good standing before that date in order to be considered to be one of these reps. So that has been sent out. I'm going to keep the ballot open until later tonight, about midnight. For any members that did not receive that, let me know and I will send it. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the Google Docs into the chat. If you are a club member, again, this is for members only. Please fill out those ballots by end of day tonight, by midnight or so, and then I'll close out the ballots. The second ballot is to talk about club format. We've had a couple issues with doing these dual sessions with Zoom. Usually it has to do with sound or the projector or my computer not behaving well with the projector. So we did send out a survey and we're asked members the question of, and actually, Richard, do you have that email by any chance? You had a really nice write-up of the arguments both in support and against. And I'd like you to come up and read those, or I will read them. Okay. So in our June meeting, the club leadership discussed the format in which we hold our meetings with members in attendance. This is our normal monthly meetings. Specifically, it's been brought to our leadership that the club could consider returning from a hybrid format, which we're doing now, where we meet in person as well as a Zoom option for those who cannot attend. After the discussion in June, it became clear that there was no general consensus, and that both the members in attendance and the club leadership were divided on the issue. As a result, we put together that questionnaire, and the arguments in favor of staying with the hybrid format centered around maintaining the human connection among club members, committee members. Politics is an in-person experience. Having that one-on-one at the IBEW hall and meet and have a conversation with members is an integral part of the club experience. Arguments in favor of returning to the virtual only format, which we did during COVID, included declining membership, attendance at meetings since the club switched to the hybrid format, as well as technical difficulties. My apologies to our city council members. We had that problem. A virtual only format could also be more inclusive of members who are not able to attend the meeting in person. Although our club bylaws indicate that only club leadership may make the final decision on the issue, we are encouraging all members to fill out that form and give us your feedback, and then we will take it up in consideration with the club leadership. So you should all have that. It came out with yesterday. I noticed mine went into my spam folder. So look for it there. And I will go ahead and repost that. And then while I'm sending that out, we'll open it up for, let's start with Ellis, if there's any political directors, and then followed by Alan with the treasurer's report.
First off, the minutes to the last June 19th meeting. We had candidates for District Supervisor District 4 running against Nate Miley. Jennifer Rustine, introduced by Richard Lai. Candidates for Senate District 5, Miguel Villaputa, I introduced them. And candidates for U.S. Senate, Jacob Farmos, introduced by Jackie. And we had Avoiding Apocalypse author and club member Jeff Colvin, also introduced. The club discussed nominations for the pre-primary endorsement caucus. And as Jackie just pointed out, she's sending out ballots for that. There's also the discussion as to whether we have Zoom or mixed meetings, as Jackie just reported. The treasurer's report reported $2,706 in the treasury. The secretary read the minutes of the prior meeting, and we had announcements that we would have two special meetings, one with Adam Schiff here live on July 11th, and with Barbara Lee on July 13th via Zoom. One on July 11th filled this room like I've not seen it filled before. So that was a very good meeting. So much for the secretary's minutes. I sent you this in an email, so you have the text.
And I did pop it into a document, and I will share that now. So here's the minutes
And
from Ellis.
the political director's report. We've led the country a number of times. We were the first club to endorse Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And Eric Swalwell.
Yes.
And we've done a number of other things. Jackie Point read the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, Part 3, which has to do with sedition. And I didn't know you were gonna do that. But
Surprise.
I didn't know that you were gonna read that, but it fit in perfectly with what I'm going to propose. Which has been proposed by a number of scholars. Those scholars include two really heavy hitters from, of all places, the Federalist Society, which is the most conservative legal organization, applying Trump the names of Supreme Court justices and like that. And two of their hitters, very heavy hitters, have written a 126-page opinion published in some law journal, I forget which one it was, saying that Trump is not eligible because he has committed sedition. And by bringing it to our Secretary of State, and all the Secretary of States throughout the country and all the states, they're the ones who decide what goes on the ballot. Don't like it, sue me. And I think that our Secretary of State is ready to take on that battle. And if we can't win it in California, we're not going to win it anyplace else. But if we take it on in California, then California has seen all of the evidence. So we don't have to wait for Jack Smith. We don't have to wait for the sky to fall and Trump to get elected. We can prevent him from being on the ballot in California and serve as a model for other states to do the same thing. So I'm ready to supply that resolution or letter. I propose that it be a letter that we send to the Secretary of State saying, don't put Trump on the ballot. Do you have a question back there?
I did have a question. And this is me not knowing much of the issue that you're, the legal term of the issue you're gonna talk about. She technically supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And he's committed to this. Let's just go ahead and probably ask. He hasn't been convicted. But how does that square with saying, oh, he can't run?
Well,
Because he hasn't.
well, the Constitution is very clear on this. Jackie read it, very clear. You commit sedition, you can't run. This law was created after the Civil War to prevent Civil War officers and men and the folks that helped them
I'm doing it again.
and commit the war against the United States of America. They did not have to be convicted of anything. I just say, you're a Confederate soldier, you're not running for office in this country. And that's the way it went down. Now, of course, Trump has the ability and probably would sue to get him on the ballot. And I hate to quote George Bush too, bring it on.
So that is a gray area.
I don't know that it's a gray area. It's not just conservative legal scholars. The guys on our side, Lawrence Tribe, who's a very progressive law professor and a great renowned Harvard law professor, is saying the same thing. So both sides of the aisle are saying he is not eligible to run for office, for any federal office or state office, just like the 14th Amendment says.
I would be the last to support Trump on anything. But I do want to indicate that the article of the 14th Amendment says commit sedition or commit treason. So that's a word. It doesn't specifically say that it doesn't need to be convicted or does need to be convicted. So that issue in essence is open.
Well,
whether
it's already been done.
Opponents on, historically on other issues. Yeah, but these are individual decisions that need to be made. But I am highly in favor of writing this wonderful letter. It's an excellent idea. I'm behind it 100%, would be willing to co-sign if you want.
Okay.
And Ellis, one thing I would say is I think I saw it with my own eyes happening that day. I mean, how many witnesses do we need to this event? We all watched it live.
There were about 7 billion of them.
The issue is legally whether it needs. to be
Right.
Convicted or not, and this is the decision that each individual Secretary of State can make, so let's give them the opportunity.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
That's the political directors. Anybody else have a comment on that or anything like that? Okay,
Do we have any other officers that have updates? Ron, Sharon, any other of our chair reports, anything else?
Well, the Entertainment Committee Chair wonders if he's going to put together an entertainment package for a UDC event. Do we have an update on?
The update on that is I'm still working on trying to get the new treasurer in place. And it's taking a while. And I'm not gonna bore the club with the details of that, but it is taking a while. What we talked about, and I'd like you guys to stick around after we're done here, so we could talk about that potential date in September. We have a couple potential dates. I've been doing some research, but we need to talk about the mechanics. Do we just want to do it under the club, and maybe then if we raise some funds, we can make a donation to the UDC? Trying to coordinate it through the UDC right now is very difficult.
Okay.
And I'm afraid I'm gonna be up against the wire. So if we'll stick around at the end of this and we'll have that discussion a little more. Save the date. The Unity Dinner for Alameda County Democratic Party is, the date is October 14th. Is that correct, Richard? October 14th is our date, so save that date. We're looking at potentially doing some kind of a picnic or evening event, either the weekend of September 23rd or September 30th. But again, we need to talk about that a little more. But that's where we're at today. If there's no other club business, oh, Alan, treasurer report. That's important.
You're doing fine.
If nothing else, I'll be brief. This is for 2 months, because we had a meeting last month. We had an income of $280, which is really quite a bit for that time of year. And I think a lot of that was spurred on by our event with the Congressman Schiff. Our expenses for the dues were $9.80 per square, which is the clearinghouse. We had our annual insurance bill of $561. That went up $11 last year. We also had a media for our website, $252, and supplies $70.74. Total expenses $840, which put us in the red for the month, $560.55. Started off with $2706.72. We went the whole $560.55, leaving us a total in the bank of $2,146.17. Also, we have 89 members. We're up to 89. Last year we had 120. And we have about 42 people who haven't renewed. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And if you want to vote in next month, we will have our endorsement vote. So from the various people that we've heard over the past couple months, I'll be sending out reminders, letting people look at the videos from past interviews or when we've heard from other candidates. And then next month, we will be holding our endorsement meeting. So if you want to participate in that vote, you do have to be a member in good standing, even though if you joined today, that's only through the end of this year, but at least you get to participate in the pre-endorsement or in our club's endorsement process. Okay. And I guess I just wanted to close the club meeting tonight in honor of for Maui and what's going on there. Oh my God, I've been to Lahaina so many times and it just breaks your heart. Biden spoke in front of that big tree there, and it did survive. It's burnt pretty good, but it did survive and the people of Hawaii are resilient. We're gonna get through this. I'm gonna post some information about ways you can help a couple different organizations, charitable organizations, the Maui Food Bank, the Red Cross, the Hawaiian Community Foundation Board, and the Maui Humane Society. So if you have any funds that you can donate to help out the people of Hawaii, it would be wonderful. So with that, I will go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned. That's ridiculous. I think I want to say.